The film begins in the distant future with a Marine named Gecko, who sustained a devastating spinal injury during a brutal war, leaving him permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Since that day, Gecko has been forced to depend entirely on a wheelchair for mobility, especially as the highly complex spinal surgery he needs to recover is extraordinarily expensive, far beyond what he could ever afford on his own. Yet, despite his physical limitations, deep in his heart Gecko still yearns for adventure and longs to live life as he once did, full of movement and freedom. He refuses to surrender to the idea of living the rest of his days as a disabled man, confined to a chair, watching the world pass by. One fateful night, while at a crowded nightclub, Gecko notices a man aggressively harassing a woman on the dance floor. Unable to stand by and watch, Gecko rolls forward to intervene. He clashes with the man in a heated fight that leaves them both panting for breath. But instead of receiving thanks or respect for his bravery, the club's security team roughly grabs him and hurls him, along with his wheelchair, out onto the street in the cold night air. It is at that exact moment that Gecko is approached by two agents from a powerful interstellar space agency. They bring news that will change his life forever. His twin brother, Tom, has died in an accident. Tom, they explain, was not only a gifted scientist but also a key figure in a groundbreaking initiative known as the Avatar program, a massive interstellar research mission set on a distant moon called Pandora. This lush, alien world is home to the Nausicaa, tall, blue-skinned beings, slightly larger than humans, perfectly adapted to their exotic environment. The agents reveal that Tom was chosen for the Avatar program because of his unique genetic compatibility, allowing him to remotely control a Nausicaa human hybrid body, or Avatar, for research, diplomacy, and exploration. Now, because Gecko and Tom share identical DNA, they offer Gecko the chance to take his brother's place in the program. Though grief-stricken by Tom's sudden death, Gecko, who is soon referred to as Jake, feels a spark of hope at the possibility of doing something meaningful with his life, despite his disability. The agency sweetens the offer by promising a massive payout, more than enough to cover the surgery that could repair his spine and let him walk again, a tempting reward in a future where medical costs have become staggeringly high. They explain that the journey to Pandora will take 6 years in real time, but aboard the spacecraft, the crew will remain in cryogenic sleep, making the passage feel like only a single night. With renewed purpose, Jake accepts the mission with enthusiasm. 6 years later, Jake awakens as the ship arrives in Pandora's orbit. He and the other newcomers don oxygen masks, as the moon's atmosphere is toxic to humans. Stepping out, Jake finds himself in the middle of the Angel's Breakfast Project base, surrounded by towering machinery and bustling workers, many of them former soldiers now working as highly paid mercenaries for the space agency. Despite his wheelchair, Jake carries himself with quiet determination, refusing to see himself as inferior to the others. While exploring the base, Jake notices massive industrial equipment and a large blue arrow embedded in the wheel of a heavy cargo hauler, a clear sign of resistance from the Nausicaa, who see humans not as visitors, but as hostile invaders. This sentiment becomes even clearer during a briefing led by Colonel Miles Quaritch, the hardened head of military operations on Pandora. The colonel warns the new arrivals that the Nausicaa are not to be underestimated. They are intelligent, physically superior to humans, and deadly in combat despite relying on seemingly primitive weapons. Furthermore, much of Pandora's wildlife is predatory and extremely dangerous. Quaritch emphasizes that every soldier must follow protocol to survive, as they are, for all practical purposes, operating in a war zone. After the briefing, Jake meets two scientists, Norm Spellman and Max Patel, who take him to see the avatars, genetically engineered bodies created from a blend of human and Nausicaa DNA. These avatars can survive in Pandora's harsh environment and are controlled remotely by human operators whose consciousness is linked from within a special capsule. However, if the operator wakes up or is forcibly disconnected, control of the avatar ends instantly. Because Jake is Tom's identical twin, Tom's avatar can be linked directly to Jake's nervous system with perfect compatibility. At that moment, Dr. Grace Augustine, the head of the Avatar program, returns from a mission in her own avatar body. She warmly greets Norm, Tom's former colleague, because of his knowledge of Nasik's culture and fluency in their language. Some Nasiks, in turn, speak English due to years of contact with humans. However, when Grace sees Jake in his wheelchair, her expression hardens. She bluntly states that she doesn't need an untrained outsider, claiming she needed Tom, not Jake. She embarrasses him in front of others and later complains to Parker Selfridge, the project's corporate administrator, that Jake will be useless. Parker, however, disagrees, noting that Jake's military training could make him valuable for the mission. From Parker, Jake learns the program's true purpose: to secure a rare mineral called unobtanium, valued at $20 million per kilogram for its immense energy potential. Unfortunately, the largest unobtanium deposits lie directly beneath Home Tree, the sacred dwelling of the Omaticaya clan of Nasiks, making peaceful negotiation nearly impossible and fueling the core of the human-Nasiks conflict. Grace reluctantly allows Jake to join her team. The next day, Jake is linked to his avatar body for the very first time. The joy of being able to walk, run, and feel whole again overwhelms him. He bolts out of the lab like an overexcited child, running into the sunlight, until Grace intercepts him. Although she had doubted him, she is quietly impressed by how naturally he controls the avatar. The following day, Colonel Miles pulls Jake aside, offering him a covert assignment: gather intelligence on the Nasiks so the colonel can decide whether to win them over or drive them out by force to obtain the unobtanium beneath their home. Jake agrees, sensing this could be his chance to prove himself. Jake, Norm, and Grace set out into Pandora's breathtaking jungle in their avatar bodies, accompanied by pilot Trudy Chacon in a gunship. Acting as the group's armed escort, Jake carries military weapons, prepared for the dangers that lie ahead. In the dense forest, they encounter a towering creature resembling a prehistoric dinosaur. It charges after Jake, forcing him into a frantic chase through the undergrowth. He fires his rifle repeatedly but misses every shot. In the chaos, he loses both his weapon and his gear before diving from a towering waterfall to escape the beast. Alone and cut off from the others, Jake quickly improvises a spear from his combat knife and sturdy tree branches, then uses a sticky, flammable resin to start a small fire for protection. As night falls, glowing flora illuminates the jungle around him, just before a pack of wolf-like predators silently surrounds him. Jake swings his torch to keep them at bay, the firelight glinting off their predatory eyes. But their numbers are too great, and soon he is forced into a desperate, teeth-gritted battle, slashing wildly with his dagger as the creatures close in on all sides. This is the moment when Neytiri emerges from the shadows and rescues Jake from the vicious creatures attacking him. Neytiri is not just a skilled warrior but also one of the respected leaders of the Nasiks clan. Grateful for her help, Jake thanks her and asks if she would teach him how to fight like her people. However, Neytiri firmly tells him to return to where he came from, believing he does not belong in their world. Not long afterward, a man named Tsute arrives, leading a squad of armed Nasiks warriors. They quickly surround Jake and take him captive. Tsute, destined to be the future leader of the clan, brings him before Itukin, the current chief and Neytiri's father. Upon discovering that Jake is a human soldier, Itukin's first instinct is to have him killed. But Jake desperately pleads for his life, insisting that he wishes to learn everything about the Nasiks and become one of their own. At that tense moment, Neytiri's mother and the revered spiritual leader of the clan arrives. She has the rare ability to commune directly with Iwa, the great deity worshipped by the Nasiks. Using her spiritual connection, Emoat senses Jake's true nature and sees that he is different from most humans. Convinced of his sincerity, she decides to give him a chance, instructing Neytiri to take Jake under her wing and teach him the ways of their people. That night, Neytiri brings Jake into the heart of the village to sleep among the Nasiks. When he drifts off, his consciousness shifts back to his human body, resting inside the capsule at the space station. Jake eagerly recounts the entire encounter to his colleagues, who are astonished that he has managed to gain the trust of the Nasiks so quickly. Soon after, Parker informs Jake about the precious mineral unobtanium, buried directly beneath the Nasik's sacred homeland. Parker tasks Jake with convincing the Nasiks to leave the area and relocate, offering incentives such as schools, medicine, and infrastructure in return. However, he also warns Jake that if the mission is not accomplished within 3 months, the military will intervene with devastating force, deploying fighter jets and massive bulldozers to annihilate the land. Jake reluctantly agrees to this plan and returns to the clan. He begins rigorous training, learning their combat techniques, how to ride the mighty war beasts, and gradually mastering the Nasik's language with Neytiri's guidance. Each time he returns to the station, Jake delivers detailed reports to Parker and Colonel Miles, including village layouts, entry and exit routes, and weak points in their defenses. Max, noticing Jake's intel sharing, warns Grace about it. Outraged, Grace condemns Parker and Miles for their aggressive, destructive approach, so different from her own peaceful intentions. In response, Grace relocates her team to a more remote camp, equipped with avatar capsules, to keep them away from Parker and Miles' interference. Jake presses on with his mission, eventually facing his greatest challenge, taming an Ikran, a fierce flying creature used for travel and combat. Against all odds, he succeeds, earning new respect among the Nasiks. 3 months pass, and guilt begins to weigh heavily on Jake as he realizes the depth of the trust he has betrayed. While Miles declares the mission complete, Jake persuades him to allow one final act, attending the clan's sacred initiation ceremony. Granted permission, Jake is formally welcomed as a true member of the Nasiks. He also finally confesses his deep feelings for Neytiri. One day, while Jake is in his avatar body, Neytiri urgently wakes him to show that bulldozers are tearing through the forest. Jake attempts to stop the destruction, raising Miles' suspicion that Jake has begun siding with the Nasiks. Meanwhile, the Omaticaya prepare for war, but Jake is unable to talk them down. The military launches a sudden assault, cutting off Jake and Grace's connection to their avatars. Desperate, Grace pleads with Parker to halt the operation, warning that it will kill countless women and children. Parker grants her only 1 hour to convince the Nasiks to evacuate. Jake and Grace quickly re-enter their avatars, rush to the clan, and warn them of the impending destruction. Jake confesses that he began as a spy, but now stands fully with them. Enraged by his admission, the Nasiks tie Jake and Grace to a tree. Miles arrives in heavily armed gunships, releasing tear gas followed by incendiary bombs. In the chaos, Itukan is killed, plunging Neytiri into grief. Once more, Jake and Grace's link is severed, and they are captured, only for Trudy and Max to help them escape. They flee to a secluded forest location with avatar capsules. Grace, gravely wounded, is taken to the Tree of Souls in a desperate bid to save her, but her injuries are too severe, and she dies. In her honor, Jake takes an extraordinary risk, taming a Torok, the colossal and legendary flying predator feared by all. His success unites all Nasiks clans for the first time in living memory. The climactic battle begins, with the Nasiks launching a fierce assault from both land and air, aided by Pandora's wild creatures, who instinctively join in defending their shared home. Trudy supports them from the skies, while Miles descends in an armored combat suit to confront Jake directly. Just as Miles is about to kill Jake, Neytiri strikes him down with her bow, saving Jake's life. With Miles defeated, the war ends in a resounding Nasiks victory. All humans are expelled from Pandora, except Jake and a handful of human allies who have proven their loyalty. Jake chooses to remain among the Nasiks forever. At the Tree of Souls, his consciousness is transferred permanently into his avatar body, allowing him to live on as one of the people beside Neytiri for the rest of his days. The moral of this story is that respect for nature and all living beings is essential for true harmony. Greed and exploitation can destroy both worlds and the soul, but empathy can heal them. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and see you in the next video.